Hello and welcome to a very, very special interview edition of the Irish Wrestling Podcast. My name is Mark O'Brien and I've been joined today by the director of Dynamic Wrestling, the promoter, owner, coach, everything under the sun with Revolution Pro Wrestling, Mr. Andy Quildan. Andy's been very, very good enough to give us his time this afternoon on a glorious Friday afternoon here in Dublin. I assume it's the same over in Portsmouth. Andy, thanks very much for joining us. How are you?
No problem. Well, the sun's shining, so it always lifts the mood.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Listen, Andy, I won't keep you too long here. Listen, I'm just going to get right down to the meat of the matter. I've been a long time Rev Pro fan from afar over here in Ireland. I attended a couple of shows you promoted yourself, be it the 10th anniversary show, Royal Quest last year, and I've been extremely impressed by not only your booking style, the type of shows you put on, but also the production, everything around it, running amazing venues such as Your Call. I've done ahead of this now, I've done a small bit of digging into your own background, reading interviews you've done back going through to 2018. So the more I've kind of read about you, the more I've been curious to kind of have a chat with you. So hence why I've reached out to you today. Your own kind of background, you started off within the wrestling business, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you started out aspiring to be a referee and then aspiring to be a booker. The next thing you know, you're a promoter, you're an owner, you're doing everything under the sun for Revolution Pro Wrestling. Can you just tell us a bit more, people who may not be as familiar with your own work in the Irish scene, a bit about your own background?
Yeah, so to be honest, I've always just wanted to be around professional wrestling. I just loved professional wrestling since I was a child, and it's something that I've not been able to grow out of. And that kind of love, it wasn't necessarily something that where I was like I'm sure as a child I probably wanted to be a wrestler, but the same way I wanted to be Superman, and the same way I wanted to be Spider-Man, you know. So it was never a fact that wrestling was a dream for me, but I knew I wanted to be around it. And I guess growing up, I kind of had two loves, one being theatre, one being wrestling. And wrestling's really an amalgamation of everything. And I loved directing theatre. And I loved performing in theatre, which I guess lends to all the different roles that I've undertaken over the years. But I guess I started out as a referee with a promotion called FWA. And from there, I kind of branched out refereeing kind of all over the country. Just a Cliff Notes version. One of the beauties of being a referee is you get to see every single part, especially in those days when invariably I'd be the only referee on the card, but you get to see every single part of the show. You're up close and personal to the action. And I really consider myself, I always remember Jim Ross using the term, so and so is a student of the game, and I always wanted to be a student of the game. So I was always studying, I was always learning, and I always watched as much wrestling as possible. But when I was refereeing, I'd used it as an opportunity to try and study what was going on in front of me. You know, when did a crowd react a certain way? How would I have done things differently? Looking at false finishes, the speed of a count, how the referee can play the part in enhancing a professional wrestling match. And as well, going all around the country meant that I wasn't in any one kind of bubble. You know, FWA was my home promotion, but I refereed for all kinds of promotions up and down the country. And that enabled me to see a variety of talent. You know, back in those days, I think I was probably one of the first promoters who started stupidly saying to hell with the cost, let's just put on the best shows we possibly can, because back in those days, for example, you'd have a Birmingham car, so you'd have 5 guys from Birmingham. You'd have a London car, 5 guys from London. That would probably be it. You'd have two cars from 2 locations and perhaps some local guys. But so as a result, it was very hard to see, I guess, for example, like a north-south mix. So, for example, right now, if you look at our shows right now, we've got people from up north, people like Luke Jacobs, people like Leon Slater. You'd never see them mixing with guys from down south like Michael Oku, Ricky Knight Jr., just to, to name a couple on each side. And I feel that because of that, I was able to see, because I'd travel anywhere to referee, and I was able to see all these different wrestlers who I'd not been exposed to before. And I was like, oh, this guy would work well with this guy, you know? And I ultimately wound up becoming the booker of a promotion called IPW UK. That was in, I want to say 2005, but potentially 2006. It was the second year of the promotion, March of that year, I believe. So whenever that promotion started, it was in the second year of that promotion. And that's where I kind of really got to know the business. and started to care about the business. But essentially, I was spending someone else's money, and you know, when you're trying to put on the best shows you possibly can, sometimes you just have to put your money where your mouth is, which kind of then led to me becoming a promoter. Again, short version of a story. Promoted IPW shows, and then I broke away and started promoting Revolution Pro Wrestling shows in 2012, which essentially was just a continuation of where we were at with IPW. But it meant that I was able to preserve the high standards that I'd set for all the shows that I promoted. So throughout that time, I've done various other jobs as well. I've been a commentator, I've been a ring announcer. You know, I still now put up a ring, sell merchandise, you know, every single job that you can think of, I kind of do. And I think really it necessitates being a promoter of a promotion like Revolution Pro Wrestling. It necessitates getting your hands dirty and doing multiple jobs. And I mean, it doesn't mean that I'm doing the best. I could like to call myself a jack of all trades. So I'm not necessarily doing the best job I can that anyone can do. So sure, I know there's a lot of roles whereby I could bring people in and pay them to do it, and they could do a better job than I do doing it. But running on a budget, especially with today's economy and what have you, it's essential that I cover as many of those jobs as possible. But my passion's in the booking of the shows. My passion's not in promoting. You know, my passion's booking the shows. My passion's seeing talent fulfill their potential, and seeing my vision come to life, and being able to almost control, or not control, but play with an audience's emotions. Because I think there's nothing more pure and beautiful than the natural reaction you can get from a professional wrestling show. It's I guess, you know, I always say, look, it's the closest I think wrestling is to theatre, is kind of a musical theatre. But the difference is, in musical theatre, you wait till the end of a number before you give a round of applause or a reaction. But in wrestling, the reaction's instantaneous, and the show's different every single night as well. So that's what kind of attracts me to it. And I guess that's what I do. So the answer to what I do is everything.
Yeah, listen, I think there's a huge amount of overlap we touched on at the start there in terms of your own aspirations for getting into the business and people wanting to learn as much as they can and just being enamored by every aspect of it. And I suppose you're living the dream so many of us would love to do. Particularly, say, this part of the world, only 5 million people, only a couple of different companies going in the country. It's not always possible. But listen, huge kudos to you for that. You touched on something there just around kind of being your own man and putting your money where your mouth is. I think your relationship with New Japan, and I suppose not following the trend where a number of different companies did over the 2010s, where they moved over and began a relationship with WWE. You touched at the time about even if you said in one interview, even if WWE took all our talent, we just build new guys. We're here for the long term. We provide a very different product from WWE, and we should only compare ourselves to what we did yesterday. That really struck a chord with me in terms of there's a huge amount of wrestling in Europe, by and large, that is mimicking, say, American style wrestling. And you also touched on your relationship with New Japan in terms of there's no funding involved in it. It's very much off your own bat. You're paying talents to come over. It's a very much a give and take relationship in terms of you give, they take, they take, or they give, you take. So it's quid pro quo as such. So in terms of your own booking and your own kind of philosophy then around running your company and kind of differentiating yourself from the competition, what would you say, how would you summarize that yourself?
Well, it's a loaded question.
Sorry,
I mean,
yeah, sorry.
For me, like, and it covers a lot of ground. So for me, the way I describe my philosophy of professional wrestling, I think perhaps you could make the argument that I take it, and when I say, look, I think some people could make the argument that I take everything too seriously, right? Because I feel that if you don't take yourself seriously, then how can we expect the paying public to do that? So when I say that, what I mean is a lot of people, and there's nothing wrong with this at all, and I understand it. Obviously, when you get into professional wrestling, you're like, I want to go to WWE, or now I want to go to AEW, right? And I think that that's fine. right? And I think it's fine to be a fan of those products. So I'm
Yeah.
a fan of those products, or when those products are delivering good professional wrestling and my type of professional wrestling. There's stuff I don't like about both sides. There's stuff I
Hmm.
love about both sides. And when it's done right, I think it's hard to argue that any professional wrestling, when done right, it's hard to argue there's a form of entertainment that can come close to it.
Hmm.
And my philosophy is to really believe in our talent, believe in the product that we put on, and know that the only difference between us and WWE, us and AEW, us and New Japan, the only difference is the budget which is behind it.
Yeah.
I think from an in-ring perspective, our product holds up and stands up against any
Yeah.
any professional wrestling product in the world. And I think that if I didn't have that belief, then I think it'd be a very hard sell.
Yeah.
I don't think Revolution Pro Wrestling would be what it is right now. And I believe that it would make decisions like, for example, go in with WWE
Mm.
back then when everyone else did.
Yeah.
It make those decisions a lot easier because you're looking at yourself as almost beneath WWE, beneath AEW,
Mm.
etc. And yes, I recognize that they're a larger promotion. Yes, I understand
Yeah.
how fantastic it would be to work with them, etc. But like to me, if you work with a promotion, there has to be benefits of both to both sides,
Yeah.
and it's not just fulfilling, like to be able to say, "Oh, I work with WWE" or "I work for WWE." You have to be able to reap the benefits of what you sow, and I feel that what I would like ultimately is to build something. And again, it's a process, and I don't know if we'll ever get there, but I'm doing everything I can to get us
Yeah.
there. But it's a process of getting our guys of the mindset of, look, we're going to grow this thing. We're going to grow Revolution Pro Wrestling. We're going to grow the British wrestling scene. And I would love that it might not be this generation's wrestlers, it might not be next generation's wrestlers, but it might be the generation after to aspire to be like, I want to wind up in Rev Pro. But for that to happen, obviously we need to keep building, we need to keep growing, and we need to keep doing as much as we can to make that a realistic possibility. I'm
Yeah.
very aware of how many steps back we are, but like I say, because I've got such belief in the product that we present, it's just all the stuff around it that we need to catch up on. But like, we're one investor away
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
that happening. We're one big TV deal away from that happening. We're a few sponsors away from that happening. So it's very achievable, and I believe that if you look at our growth since day one, you'll kind of see that it's achievable. And if you look at kind of the way we have weathered the storms we have weathered over our past 11 years of existence, then I think it would buy confidence that we have a chance of getting there. So I don't remember what the original question
No,
was.
you've covered more than enough. Sorry, first of all, before you go any further, I was going to say this huge kudos to you. I was going to lead on to the next saying, like, listen, you've made a number of extremely bold and brave decisions over the last 11 years, and you've been extremely vindicated. From where your competition across the UK were running the Hydro, Wembley. Now, a lot of them might be struggling financially compared to where they were before, struggling in attendances, but you seem to be far and away the best attended, the best quality of shows being put on in Europe, and you're promoting shows on behalf of New Japan, be it Royal Quest over in Crystal Palace, which is one of the best live events I've ever been to in my life. Um, like as I say, you're one TV deal away from kind of making the next step, having a domestic product within Europe, within the UK, and it's hugely commendable. But just in terms of you're talking about what you've weathered over the last number of years, in terms of longevity for you guys, I know there's a number of different promotions are doing so currently. In terms of partnerships and I suppose bringing Rev Pro abroad, like I know you did a show back in New York in 2019, I believe, just before WrestleMania 35. Do you have any plans on, suppose, say, I know Progress, for example, did a show with WXW recently. They're looking to branch out to Defy. Would you have any plans to kind of expand, be it from an Irish perspective, maybe do a partnership show over in Ireland at some point with OTT, or a standalone show, or maybe doing a Rev Pro show somewhere else, with somebody or on your own?
So I feel that it's something we would like to do. I always say, when people say, "Will you come to so and so? Will you come to so and so?" It's like, if you support it, we absolutely will. If there's enough demand there, we absolutely will. I made a decision that we needed to focus on. So the year that COVID struck, actually, so we've done WrestleMania shows. We did Orlando, New Orleans, and New York.
Yeah.
And they all went very well. And actually, it kind of blew me away how well received Revolution Pro Wrestling was, and how many fans of Rev Pro there are around the globe. And Michael Oku experienced something similar recently when he went over for PWG at the top of the year, and he couldn't believe it either, kind of how many people know him, know his matches, the appreciation for what he's done. I don't really think we get it as much in this country, because I think it's almost taken for granted. And if you watch, and again, I'm biased, I'm absolutely biased, but like, I think if you watch any other indie, all the buzzword indies, if you watch those and you look at our ring work compared to their ring work, ours is, and look, pure depth, ours is night and day. But I made the conscientious decision of, we need to focus on our business at home in 2020. It was a time for a period of rebuilding and growth, which it all started at. Well, it's kind of, you felt it. You could, anyone who was kind of watching the product at the time could feel the ripples of momentum building. We'd just taken over from Southside Wrestling. We'd added Ricky Knight Jr. and Robbie X to our shows, which had really just freshened things up a little bit. There was other guys we'd kind of used more who had come from Southside, but Robbie X and Ricky Knight Jr. spring to mind as two of the guys who wound up becoming top guys for us. And if you look at where that, the build of Michael Oku, it culminated at that York Hall show, February 2020, where Michael Oku beat El Phantasmo for the Cruiserweight Championship. Will Ospreay defeated Zack Sabre Jr. for the Heavyweight Championship, and Giselle Shaw defeated Zoe Lucas for the Women's Championship. And really, that was almost like the shot. This is it. A lot of building foundations. Let's go. Summer of Ospreay as champion. That was a plan, Ospreay versus all comers from around the world. And then COVID struck, boom, and it derailed us. So really, we're still recovering from that. And it's a case of, again, I've always been about the foundations, get those foundations strong to make sure that, that we can stay the test of time. And something, again, from the previous question, which I remember you saying about, I said we'd build new stars. There's always been that process of building stars. During the pandemic, we lost a lot of guys to NXT UK as well. I don't want to say we lost a lot of guys during the pandemic, because that sounds
they passed away or something. Yeah.
It was, but yeah, we lost a lot of guys to NXT UK during the pandemic as well, and that just, case in point, we just. It kind of proved the point, because we just built new guys. But obviously, we've got two wrestling schools now, one in London, one in Portsmouth. We're continuing to bring through talent the right way, and making talent think differently. We're a very different training school than a lot of training schools. We try to make talent think about professional wrestling in a different way. And I think that it definitely comes across by how well-rounded some of the products of our wrestling schools are. And again, we're kind of almost a quality. And again, the philosophy in training has changed a lot as well recently. It's more quality over quantity. We're not trying to just get bodies through. We're sacrificing for our art. We're not just trying to get bodies through the door to make a few quid. We're literally trying to turn people into the best professional wrestlers they can be. And it's all a process. It's all a
100%.
process. And from the contenders division through to the guys that are breaking in, everything we're doing is geared towards the future.
Yeah.
And to me, that's where my main concerns are. So, hopefully it gets to a stage where all that's we've got a great pipeline, everything's running smoothly. And again, I'm not as hands-on with the London school as I am with the Portsmouth school.
Yeah.
But
there's great people. There's great people there as well. Like I've been over a number of times to train with Dave, Connor, Michael, and stuff over in London, over in the Tottenham area. So like, listen, I'd say like the way you've kind of built your business model, like the sustainability, making sure everything's a prudent business model before kind of walking before you can run as such, and particularly having to navigate COVID solo and the kind of challenges that would go with that, and particularly now with inflation, particularly over in the UK compared to the rest of Europe. Like, you seem to be in very, very sound footing for what's to come for a huge summer for Rev Pro. And I won't take up too much more of your time. You've been incredibly generous so far. I'm just very cognizant of that. You've got a huge summer coming up in there. I'm glad you touched on Michael Oku. He's obviously got his huge show on the July 9th against the Great O'Khan, an epic encounter, and you've obviously got then the 11th year anniversary on All In weekend. Like, what can Irish fans? I know there's a huge amount of contingent friends of mine who are wrestling fans from over this part of the world. They're traveling over for both those shows actually. For an Irish audience, what can fans expect? Like, obviously, I'm hugely sold on Rev Pro's promotion, the quality of work, wrestlers, storytelling, and everything. What can fans expect if they travel over to London for those shows?
Well, a great live event atmosphere,
Yeah.
a great live event experience. You can lose yourself. That's again the beauty of it. You just lose yourself for those 3 hours that you're kind of in the building, and you kind of it's an experience. It really is. And I think you can look at for those shows in particular, you can look at high production values. That's something else we're constantly trying to, if you look at the first York Hall show to the York Hall show just gone, you can see the level of investment we're kind of trying to put into the production. Again, it wasn't something that was possible for the first one, but it's now something that we're consciously trying to continue to improve step by step, brick by brick. So you're going to see a good production. You're going to see established characters, stories. If you've never been to a Revolution Pro Wrestling show before and you've not followed it at all going into the shows, you'll be able to pick them up and you'll be able to enjoy them at face value. If you do a bit of research, if you watch the preview shows, if you get on RevProOnDemand.com and watch some of the shows leading into it, you'll get a deeper understanding of what's going on. And I think that's what I've always tried to do in terms of booking, a layered booking, in a sense of it's easy to pick up and watch and understand. But if you do invest your time and your money, then you will get a greater meaning, a greater understanding, and hopefully a greater enjoyment from the product which is put in front of you. Obviously, Epic Encounters, a July 9th show, and it's it's not just a title. We want every single match to be epic. There's going to be a diversity of styles on display. I always talk about wrestling being a buffet of styles. We're going to be a diversity of styles from the likes of Jordan Breaks and Zack Sabre Jr., who are going to have what I'm sure will be one of the most sound technical wrestling matches that anyone's ever seen. You're going to see Michael Oku in an emotionally driven contest against the Great O'Khan. If you like hard-hitting professional wrestling, Gabriel Kidd and Luke Jacobs, Will Ospreay is going to be competing. You never want to miss an opportunity to see Will Ospreay in action. It's really going to be an action-packed show, which I'm very much looking forward to. And then when we look forward to obviously the anniversary show, the day before All In, Saturday, August the 26th, I said go big or go home.
Yeah.
It's
unbelievably exciting.
Yeah, I saw it as an opportunity, and again, we've spoken time and time again about, throughout this as well, about, the importance of having that foundation, right? So perhaps it was a bit of a leap to move on to the Copper Box, but, I've got experience. I've run the Copper Box with New Japan Pro Wrestling. I was a logistic man behind that show, So I know what it takes to run a big arena.
Yeah.
You know, we've run big shows, we've run the ice arenas, we've run Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
You know, I know what it takes to run a big show. So despite the fact it's a step up for Revolution Pro Wrestling, for myself personally, I know what to do to make this work. I know what to do to make it happen. Now,
Brilliant.
all I'm hoping, I know that we've got, there's still so many moving pieces to that card. As
Yeah.
we're kind of, we're putting stuff together. But the sign of intent with Shingo versus Ospreay as one of the feature bouts on that night. It's a match which has happened 5 times in the past, and the lowest rating for anyone who's into that thing, the lowest rating that it's ever got from Dave Meltzer is 5 stars.
Yeah, that's
And
wow.
we're going to see the 6th encounter between the pair, the first time they've competed outside of Japan, first time in England, and I think it's going to be a history-making match.
Yeah.
And I can really imagine what the atmosphere is going to be like. I'm so excited about All In.
Yeah.
I'm again, like, I feel like AEW, and again, I'm not working with AEW.
Mhm.
I know Tony. He's been to some Rev Pro shows. We've exchanged some text messages from time to time. But so when I say this, I'm saying this completely independent. Right? I just want to make that clear. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
it's not a business relationship, and it's not something whereby I'm being paid to say this. But I think what AEW has done by bringing
Mhm.
All In to Wembley Stadium is huge. There was a lot of vision. There was a lot of guts. And don't get me wrong, it's easy to have guts when you've got a lot of money.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of guts because, again, even though Tony could probably afford to lose, right?
Mhm.
How it was a gamble, it was a risk, because what would it look like if they
Yeah.
got an empty stadium?
Like it's public perception as much as anything in this business. So listen, I mean, like that kind of gamble obviously is like probably been hugely inspiring for you guys to make that leap. And like I suppose you've touched it there. You guys had that solid foundation where it was, and you've run the copper box before, so it's a calculated leap as such. It's not completely
Yeah.
alien to you, and like it's very. I personally think that it's incredibly attainable, and I'm assuming you will be very close to selling out, if not sell it out. Just based on the numbers attending, flying over for that weekend alone, I think people would be madness not to attend that as well, given the show that's on offer.
I hope so, because I think the key is for people to understand again that we are a premium product.
Yeah.
This is a premium professional wrestling show.
Yeah.
It's not a case of it's not a case of
Few pints on a Saturday and watch the wrestling.
right, and just trying to grab a quick buck because we know wrestling fans are in
Yeah.
town.
Yeah.
This is going to be a meticulously thought out show. It's going to be designed to introduce people to what Revolution Pro Wrestling is all about. It's going to be a celebration of our 11 years, because the show itself, it's almost like it was an omen. It was like 11 years to the day that I stood in a ring in the Wyvern Hall in Sittingbourne, a little community centre style hall, and announced the launch of Revolution Pro Wrestling. 11 years to the day, we're going to be at the Copper Box Arena. And yeah, like the bravery and vision that AEW showed. To me, and like you said like it kind of, it's inspiring to see Tony Khan take that leap of faith, so to speak, is inspiring. So we're taking our own leap of faith. It may not be as big as AEW's leap, but
there's
us,
levels to these things, huge. And it's like it's optics wise, like I think just in terms of the industry in the UK and Europe and everything, I think it shows a signal of intent more so for UK wrestling more than anything, and like the bravery that if I assume it'll pay off, and I assume a fantastic show will come off the back of that. I don't see how platforms can take notice of that, and like the product you guys are putting on consistently, be it in a bigger setting, bigger arena, it'll be like there'll be eyes of the world to be on it. And I'm really, really excited for you. Listen, I'm very conscious of time, and I've only one or two kind of very quick fire questions for you now, Andy. You've been really, really generous with your time. Irish wrestlers in Rev Pro. I'd be lynched and shot if I didn't ask this. LJ Cleary, Sammy D, and the likes. Any chance of seeing them over in Rev Pro in the coming year?
Yeah, I mean, LJ Cleary's he's worked for us in the past.
Yeah.
Debbie Keitel, of course, has worked for us in the past. I love Debbie Keitel. I think she's a fantastic professional wrestler. Obviously, Big Dame, I don't know if he counts.
Yeah. He does,
but I think like a big thing about the world we live in at the moment, which is an unfortunate thing. So before the pandemic, like an LJ Cleary to pop on a flight and whatever, the expense that goes into it is nowhere near as high.
Yeah.
And now everything's so much more expensive, from flights to hotels, to travel, like it's all so much more expensive. So that's really a logistical problem which we face. And as well as that, we also have, I've alluded to the wrestling schools a lot. We have a lot of talent coming through. So it's about finding those spaces. And really it's about, those guys bringing something to the table, which means, because look, you can place different people in different holes. So look, I know when LJ Cleary comes, I know I'm going to get a great professional wrestling match, but I can get that same match from many other wrestlers. Right. So it's all about, and again, that's not a knock on him at all, because he's a fantastic wrestler.
It's the same over here in terms of like sustainability for your own brand as well. And you've only so many spots in the card. So I completely understand that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so really all of these guys and girls have to present something which makes them stand out from the pack.
Okay.
And that is what we're looking for. And I've never been a person who's, look, I book people based upon wrestling ability and wrestling ability alone. Right. Obviously, if people work hard, and like we've got a young lad, Dynamite Lee Dawson, starting out this weekend. He's from up north, but he's someone who's, on his own dime, has been to many of our shows over the past 18 months. Travels from Manchester to London, helps set up the ring. If anything goes wrong, he's there to help out, takes tickets, sells merchandise. Very similar story to Michael Oku. Right. So, that work ethic brings opportunity as well. But for flying talent, obviously, I appreciate it's a lot harder. So it's about finding your niche, standing out, and being adding something to the show which no one else can. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. And I'm only looking for the best professional wrestling. Again, there's no bias. It's no like, I have to have an Irish quota. There's no quota of anything. It's just,
of course.
I don't look at color of skin, sexuality, nationality. Couldn't give a toss about any of that stuff. I just care about what you produce when the cameras and the eyes are on you inside the ring. So they've got. We're not kind of against using guys.
Yeah, no, of course, and I can understand.
It was a lot more difficult.
Again, like I obviously knew probably what the answer was going to be before I asked it, but it was more so save my own skin by not asking it. But listen, I wanted to just give you kudos quickly. You touched on representation there. You gave a lovely piece. I think it was with Fightful that was published the 6th of March this year. I was reading it this morning about representation in your own role as a person of color, ethnic background, working in the wrestling industry. So it was really, really well given article and given interview, and I really, really enjoyed it. So just want to say thank you for that more than anything. I also want to, if I have one booking request, if possible in the future, just because you've booked them at Royal Quest, if possible, can we have the Greedy Souls versus FTR somewhere down the line? I guess, and just take that away if possible. Obviously, your negotiations with Tony, but I'd love to see Brendan White and Dax Harwood in a ring at some point before either of them finish their careers. But listen, Andy, huge thank you very, very much for all your time today. You've been incredibly generous and patient, and thank you for rearranging this afternoon. Listen, all Irish wrestling fans, Rev Pro have huge shows this summer. Epic Encounter, they're running weekly all across the UK. Epic Encounter July 9th, Michael Oku, Great O'Khan. End of this summer, most of us going to be an all-in weekend over in the UK in London. Will Ospreay Shingo Takagi in the Copper Box Arena on August 26th. Please do not miss it. Andy, thank you very, very much again for all your time today.
No problem. And probably I should add, for the fans in Ireland specifically who can't travel to every show, we've been working on our on-demand service, RevProOnDemand.com, and we've been live streaming the majority. I'd probably say 90% of our shows this year have been live streamed. So it's an opportunity to watch the stuff live with everyone else as well. It's not something we shout about too much, as it's technology we're kind of getting to grips with, but like most of the shows have streamed absolutely fine. So check out RevProOnDemand.com as well, so you can watch that stuff. And there's a 7-day free trial as well, so definitely check it out. And we've got such an insane summer schedule coming up, and of course it all culminates with that 11-year anniversary show. I'd love for as many people to be there as possible, and I'd love for people from different countries to bring their flags as well. I know the Irish, I know you can be very patriotic. I've seen
Yeah,
Conor
yeah.
McGregor's fights, seen Katie Taylor.
In the copper boxes, Katie Taylor in the copper box in 2012. Yeah, that was one of the more famous Irish sporting moments. So listen, I'll be encouraging everybody I can possibly can to bring the flags over. And just as you touched on the Rev Pro on demand, I binged Rev Pro on demand before I went over to 10th anniversary. I can confirm it's unbelievable platform and service compared to a lot of the other providers out there outside of WWE, etc. So listen, if you're an Irish fan looking to travel over the summer, 7-day free trial, please get yourself up to speed. You will not regret it. It'll be one of the best live event shows you can possibly encounter. 26th of August, 9th of July, Epic Encounters, and the All In weekend 11th anniversary show. Andy, thank you so much for your time again.
No problem.
No problem. Cheers. Thank you very much, everybody.